So what if we could take harmful CO₂, the stuff warming up the planet, and turn it into clean fuel using nothing but sunlight? It sounds like something straight out of science fiction, right? Well, a team of scientists just made a huge leap forward. They actually figured out a way to get two different materials to build themselves into a tiny, microscopic supercatalyst that does exactly that. What you're looking at right here is basically a diagram of artificial photosynthesis. It's a process that mimics how plants use sunlight to make their own food. But in this case, scientists have found a way to make it incredibly efficient. And the secret, it turns out, isn't about finding one single supermaterial. It's about getting two very different materials to work together in perfect harmony. Now, to really get why this is such a breakthrough, we first have to understand the main hurdle they were trying to overcome. You see, scientists already have some fantastic materials that are great at capturing sunlight, but they all share one, well, fatal flaw. So let's take perovskite crystals, for instance. These are man-made materials with this really specific crystal structure, and they are amazing at absorbing light. When sunlight hits them, bam, they generate a burst of energy. But here's the catch. That energy is gone in a flash. It's kind of like charging a battery that immediately short circuits, losing all its power before you can use it to do the hard work of converting CO₂. Okay, so how in the world do you solve that short circuit problem? Well, the answer lies in teamwork. Let's meet the two main characters, if you will, in this scientific story. And here they are. On the left, if you look really close at that microscopic image, you can see the first material. It's a compound called bismuth oxycarbonate, or BOC. It forms these really elegant layered structures that honestly look a bit like flower petals. Then our second material, cesium lead bromide, or CPB, is what's known as a quantum dot, a super tiny, powerful, square-shaped crystal. Now these are the little guys with that short circuit problem. As you can see, they look completely different, but believe it or not, they're destined to work together. So the researchers had this absolutely brilliant idea. They thought, what if we could just get these two materials to combine forces? And as this quote from their paper suggests, the secret ingredient was their electrical charge. They realized these two materials were, in a way, natural partners. This graph from the study shows us exactly why they're such a perfect match. See, on the left, the data for those CBP quantum dots shows a peak in the negative range. And on the right, the BOC petals, they show a peak in the positive range. You know what they say, opposites attract. When you mix them together, they act like tiny little magnets, getting electrostatically drawn to each other and just snapping together perfectly, all on their own. And that right there is the key. No complicated manufacturing needed. Now, this self-assembly thing is more than just a neat party trick. It actually creates a very specific, highly engineered structure that solves that original short circuit problem once and for all. So, when these two materials come together, they form something called an S-scheme heterojunction. Yeah, it sounds super complicated, I know, but don't worry. Let's break down what this special interface actually does with a simple analogy. Okay, think of it like a really sophisticated sorting system. When sunlight hits the duo, it creates energy, which comes in pairs of positive and negative charges. The S-scheme interface is designed to cleverly get rid of the useless pairs by making them recombine and just cancel each other out. And here's the crucial part. This leaves the most powerful positive and negative charges totally separated, which stops them from short-circuiting and frees them up to go convert that CO₂. And this diagram? This is the actual science behind that sorting system analogy. It's called an energy band diagram. And I know it looks complex, but what it's showing us, especially in that middle chart labeled C, is how the different energy levels of the two materials line up. It's this specific alignment that creates that sorting mechanism, forcing the useless energy pairs to fizzle out while keeping the powerful, useful charges separated and ready to get to work. All right, so the theory is really elegant, and the self-assembly part is just plain clever. But does this supercatalyst actually perform any better in the real world? Let's take a look at the data. And the results, well, they're pretty dramatic. On its own, the CPB quantum dot material produced about 43 units of carbon monoxide fuel. But when they combined it with the BOC petals, when they let them self-assemble into that S-scheme structure, the output jumped all the way up to over 80 units. So to put it really simply, the takeaway here is just incredible. By just mixing these two materials together and letting them build themselves, the scientists nearly doubled the output of useful fuel from the exact same amount of sunlight. And there's even more proof right here. This graph shows what's called photocurrent. It's basically a measure of how much electrical current gets generated when light hits the material. That black line, that's the original CPB material all by itself. But just look at the red line, which represents the self-assembled combination. The peaks are over 3 times higher. This confirms that those valuable energy charges aren't being lost to that short circuit anymore. They're actually being captured and put to work. So what does all this mean for the bigger picture? Well, this is way more than just a lab curiosity. It really points toward a brand new way of thinking about how we create solar fuels. So why does this one little experiment matter so much? Because the solution it presents isn't just efficient, it's also stable, and maybe most importantly, it's simple. The fact that these complex, high-performance structures can build themselves is the real game changer here. This isn't just about a new material. It's a whole new design principle. It's a blueprint for creating the next generation of catalysts that could one day power our world with little more than sunlight and CO₂. And that brings us to a really fascinating final question. We've just seen how physics at the nanoscale, guided by some really clever chemistry, can create remarkable new functions. So as we look to the future, could these tiny, self-assembling crystals really hold the key to a sustainable fuel economy?